From the creators of the popular science show with millions of YouTube subscribers comes the Minute Earth podcast. Every episode of the show dives deep into a science question you might not even know you had. But once you hear the answer, you'll want to share it with everyone you know. Why do rivers curve? Why did the T-Rex have such tiny arms? And why do so many more kids need glasses now than they used to? Spoiler alert, it isn't screen time. Our team of scientists digs into the research and breaks it down into a short, entertaining explanation, jam-packed with science facts and terrible puns. Subscribe to Minute Earth wherever you like to listen.
All you need is a few minutes to start your day off with something historic when you listen to the This Day in History podcast. Every day there's a new episode for you to listen and learn about what happened that day way back when. So listen and subscribe to This Day in History wherever you get your podcasts. That's This Day in History wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey grown-ups, our friends at Girl Tales are throwing a podcast party in celebration of the upcoming U.S. election that's taking place on Tuesday, November 5th. Along with other amazing kids podcasts, we're releasing this special episode all about elections and the political process. If you want to hear more, don't miss out on Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls and their episode, Maria Teresa Kumar, Voicing Your Dreams. It's about Maria Teresa Kumar, who knew from the time she became a U.S. citizen at the age of 9 that she wanted to be involved in the democratic process. As CEO of Voto Latino, she has helped register over 1 million Latinx voters to have their voices heard. You can catch their episode starting on October 17th. Make sure to follow Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls wherever you get your podcasts.
You're listening to an Airwave Media Podcast.
What's that? Is it possible? Is it true? Yes, it's another special episode, a bonus episode that doesn't count towards our count to 100, from the past and the curious. I'm Mick Sullivan, and I have almost all of my voice. I intended to release this earlier in the month, but, things happen. Voices are lost, so I'm a little hoarse. A pony, you might say. I'm excited to be a part of this swap, and I had originally intended to take some old stories together and put them together in a new way, but this is a story that I think is absolutely fascinating. If you don't know, the President of the United States sits behind a desk in the Oval Office quite often. It's the one in all the pictures and stuff, and it is called the Resolute Desk. And its story, if I'm telling it on this show, you might guess, has a rich history. And that history begins with the exploring of the Arctic Circle. We're talking about the frozen waters up around the North Pole. So, let's get started, huh? All right. Hope you enjoy. For most of the 1800s, people risked their lives, not to mention froze their hands, feet, and little patooties till they were black and blue. And all of this was in search of a path that had the potential to change the world. As in, maybe it was there, maybe it wasn't. If explorers could find the Northwest Passage, as the mythical pathway was named, it would be possible to sail a boat from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean. Sailing ocean to ocean before this was possible, but not easy. From a place like England, it meant sailing thousands of miles down and around the southern tip of South America or the African continent. It was a mammoth-sized detour, and when it comes to trade, long detours are not ideal. Traders and merchants want things quickly, which makes them more affordable. England, America, and Russia were all racing for the passage, so they dedicated ships and sailors to the new big goal for exploration, the Arctic. That space between Greenland and the tip-top of Canada, heading perhaps west over Alaska and then to the Pacific Ocean. People believed it was possible to sail a ship up there and save lots of time, but no one had done it. And that's because it's not easy. There's a bunch of islands up there that would be confusing to navigate around, but more importantly, it's super cold. Dangerously cold. That makes it tough work, but it also means the waterways are typically frozen solid, with shifting ice. If a path in the ice opened up for a boat to pass through, it could just as easily close off again, trapping a ship for who knows how long. Sometimes a boat got Titanicked, which is a phrase I just made up for when it smashed into an iceberg. Or a boat could just get stuck, which happened a lot. Sometimes for years. Hopefully the crew had come prepared for a long Arctic stay. In the face of such never-ending cold, it became clear that people needed an incentive to go freeze in the far north while trapped on a ship with a crew full of underbathed people eating the same food for months on end. Go figure. So in 1818, England issued a challenge with rewards to help get boats farther and farther into the Arctic. Sailing west, the first ship to make it to the 110-degree longitudinal line, which is a constant measurement that runs north to south around the globe, the first to make it there got prize money. And as they went further, the prize money increased. Hear ye, the first ship to cross the longitudinal line number 110 in the Arctic shall receive 5,000 pounds. 5,000 pounds of what? 5,000 pounds, money. 5,000 pounds of money? That sounds great. What are we talking about? 5,000 pounds of coins or paper money? That's probably a big difference, right? No, you misunderstand me. Where are you from? America. That makes sense. Pound is a name for legal tender in England. Like a dollar? Yeah, basically. So I get 5,000 pounds of dollars? How much is that? You know what? Can you just wait until the end and I can explain it to you personally? Anyway, longitude line 110, 5,000 pounds. Make it to longitude 130, 10,000 pounds. Make it to longitude 150, 15,000 pounds. And if you make it to the Pacific Ocean, that's 20,000 pounds to you. That sounds heavy. How am I going to carry that much money? I have my doubts that you'll even make it, so I'm not even really sure you should worry about it. Great Britain wanted to find the Northwest Passage very badly. The first country there would be able to dominate the path and have easier access to the spices and other trade goods in Asia. Great Britain also had the greatest navy in the world at the time, and it happened to be a period when there were not many wars to fight. So sailors in the navy who were hungry for glory, but had no wars to earn it, decided that the race for the Northwest Passage was the next best thing, even if it was going to be colder than they can imagine. I don't know, I can imagine an awful lot. It'll be that, and colder. Boats set sail, boats got stuck. Sailors were rescued, other boats and crews got unstuck, and eventually came back to Great Britain. But no one found the passage. Just a bunch of ice. And each expedition was a long ordeal, often lasting years. And each one came up short. In 1845, a British naval officer named Sir John Franklin was sent to search for the passage. Many thought, if anyone could do it, it was Frankie. Were they right? They were worse than right. They were wrong. Franklin led a team of sailors aboard two boats, the HMS Erebus and the HMS Terror. The Terror, which was an alarming name to say the least, had actually bombed Americans at Fort McHenry during the War of 1812. Back then, the glaring red rockets fired by it and others in the British Navy were seen from Baltimore by a man named Francis Scott Key. This sight inspired him to write what would become America's national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner. But now, America and Great Britain were not at war, so the Terror made its way to the terrifyingly vast and bleak Arctic Circle. Like many other missions, Franklin's mission failed. But without any way to communicate over great distances, especially from the middle of the Arctic, how was anyone to know? Sometimes sailors at this time actually sent messages back home over hundreds and thousands of miles with passenger pigeons. But the most Franklin did was leave notes and boxes on poles in the ice in case anyone came behind him. After a few years went by with no news from the Erebus or the Terror, people looked around and just kind of asked themselves, hey, shouldn't Frankie be back by now? So now there was a new plan. Find the Northwest Passage and find Franklin. Next up was a guy named McClure. Aboard the HMS Investigator, he'd head up to the land of ice and see what could be found. Once he made it deep into the frigid Arctic, he warmed with excitement. He was certain of his new discovery. He had found the Northwest Passage. The only problem was that it was frozen over. And soon, after doing a bit more exploring to be sure of his new discovery, his boat, like so many others, was also frozen in, immobilized by ice. But this wasn't we'll wait for the next season and we'll be okay. He and his crew would remain stuck there for 3 years. 3 years in the icy Arctic. Then, in 1853, another pair of boats were in the area, and crews were sledging over the ice when they found the Investigator. One of these boats, searching for Franklin or McClure, or whomever they might find at this point, was the HMS Resolute. McClure needed convincing to leave, though. He wanted to wait for warmer weather so the passage would open up, and he could be rich and famous.
Dude, you've been frozen in ice for 3 years. Give up. Let's go back home. There's warm beds and tea and cucumber sandwiches and stinky cheese and new Charles Dickens books. Sounds nice, right?
So McClure gave in, and the survivors and the rescuers made their way over the ice to the 2 ships, the HMS Intrepid and the HMS Resolute. But as you might guess, the boats filled with fresh sailors from England and near-frozen rescued sailors were soon surrounded by ice as well.
Enough with the ice already.
They waited until the seasons changed, and still the Resolute was stuck in the ice. So eager to return to Britain, they all went in one boat and left the HMS Resolute frozen in and fixed to the fate of the Arctic ice. We'll have the rest of the story after the break.
We're the All Creatures Podcast. Each week, Angie and I explore and share amazing details about the many animals we share our world with.
Plus, Chris and I are both PhD scientists and educators. So we do the deep dives in the scientific research and then come back and share what we learn in a fun and casual way. We also speak with other scientists, animal experts, activists, and many other conservation enthusiasts from all over the planet.
So you can find the All Creatures Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, friends. Are you looking for a storytime podcast with your littles? Something that has some great storytelling and maybe some conversation about it? Look no further. With Storytime with Philip and Mommy, my little guy Philip and I sit down every single day and read a story together. And we, of course, want you to join us. Grab your copy of the book, sit down, let's read it, and let's talk about it. We'll learn new words, we'll learn new ideas, and then we'll learn how we can use those stories in our lives. It's a lot of fun. Classics like Little Golden Books or Berenstain Bears, all the way up through the newest phenomenons like Bluey. We talk about them and we have a lot of laughs. It's a great time and we hope that you can come and join us. So please look for us and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Storytime with Philip and Mommy. Thanks so much. We'll see you there.
Hey, because this was a quick get it out fast sort of episode, and not a full episode at that, I'm going to save the You Have 30 Seconds that I have for, I've got a few. I got a lot more since my last call out, but I still need more. I'm going to save those for episode 99 and onward. I just want to get this out quickly. Same thing with quiz time. But I do want to mention making a voting plan. It's very important. Now, grown-ups in the U.S., the election takes place on Tuesday, November 5th. Are you ready for the vote? Do you have your voting plan in place? Many states offer early voting or the option to vote by mail, so it's never too soon to get started. If you're unsure of how or where to vote, need details on your state's election process, or you want to learn about the candidates running, don't wait. Head to vote.gov today and create your voting plan. And remember, kids are the future and future voters. Voting is about making our voices heard, and their thoughts and opinions matter too. Get them involved now by talking about the election, whether it's for your local school board or the presidency, and why being a voter is so important. Give them space to ask questions and bring them along when you vote, whether at the polls or when mailing in your ballot. Visit vote.gov and make your voting plan today. I will be voting on November 5th. It's my son's birthday, and I'm going to take him. And I haven't missed an election. I'm talking local, off-season, midterm. I haven't missed an election, I think, in 18 years, any of them. So it's really important to me, and I hope that comes across. Now we will return to the thrilling conclusion of the Presidential Desk and the HMS Resolute. How does it end? Whaling was tough work. Crews would sail the seas from the South Pacific to the Arctic, hunting whales, which were used for everything from lighting homes to women's fashion. In this line of work, it meant being on board a ship for months, even years at a time. It was hard, brutal, and often boring. So when whalers saw something unusual, it could be very exciting. And in September of 1855, somewhere in the Arctic, whalers aboard the American whaling ship George Henry saw something unusual: another boat. Seeing another boat wasn't that unusual, but it was notable in the vast gray cold, and certainly a break from the monotony. But this boat, 13 miles away or so, still seemed a bit unusual to them. The captain of the George Henry wanted to make contact, exchange news, talk captain to captain, or rap cap to cap, as no one has ever said. But between them and a cap-to-cap rap were 13 miles of icy sea filled with dangerous floes and bergs and such. It was treacherous to try to get closer, but something strange seemed to be going on with the boat. It seemed to be simply drifting, or perhaps stuck on ice. After 5 days of navigating the dangerous waters, they got close enough to send a signal to the other ship. But the mysterious boat never really changed its direction, and now a long, giant island of ice floated between them. The George Henry sent up a signal, a flag known to be the international signal that one captain wished to speak to the other captain. But the cap-to-cap rap flag went unanswered. As the George Henry crew watched the other boat, they saw nothing, no response, just a slow drift. An idea dawned on them. This might be a ghost ship. Maybe there was a crew, and they were stuck on the ice. Or perhaps it was just an aimless vessel floating willy-nilly through the icy Arctic. Perhaps no one was on board, or those on board were no longer alive. The captain of the George Henry wanted an answer to the growing mystery, so he chose a team of 4 men to brave the hilly and slick ice between them, board the other vessel, and see what they could learn. They set out, and when the 4 ice walkers climbed on board the ship hours later, they were surprised to find a boat in perfect condition, yet totally empty. Not a soul was around. Well stocked with food, there was also clothes, books, and playing cards left as if in the middle of a game on the ship. The 4 men had expected it to be another whaling ship, but they soon realized it was a British Navy vessel, the HMS Resolute. Around the time they decided to go back, it grew dark, too dark to venture across the ice. So they stayed the night. It was kind of cozy. Plenty of space, plenty of food, plenty of warm clothes that apparently belonged to no one who needed them. It was the kind of situation that whalers, used to being cramped on a smaller boat, could really get used to. Much nicer accommodations. And when they awoke the next morning, a storm had blown in and made it impossible to travel back again over the ice to the George Henry.
Oh darn, I guess we'll just have to stay longer.
4 days went by, and the whalers were trapped on the Resolute by the weather. As guys who had been trapped on a crowded whale ship for months, they looked around at all the space and all the stuff, and they figured, well, what else is there to do besides have a little fun? So they dressed up in officers' clothes, they ate canned food, they took naps, they drank tea, and they staged epic sword fights with the officers' swords that they found on board. It was certainly a better time than those suckers back on the George Henry were having. Part of them probably hated seeing the better weather return. Turns out ghost ships can be kind of fun. And I'm betting that they had to play it cool when they got back to the George Henry.
Oh no, totally boring. Nothing to do. It's kind of spooky on a ghost ship, you know.
Ugh, no fun. No fun at all. Nope. The George Henry was on the way back to Connecticut when they found the ghost ship. The Resolute was worth a lot of money, probably more than a bunch of barrels of whale blubber, and finders keepers rules were kind of a thing at sea, so they brought the HMS Resolute back to America with them. Later, there were some legal tangles involving ownership of the British boat, but the American government realized that there was a golden opportunity here. An opportunity for what? An opportunity for diplomacy. America and Great Britain weren't the best of friends. There was always tension, and the sea was one of those places where tensions always popped up. Members of Congress realized that if America fixed up the boat and gave it back to England, it would be more than just a nice gesture. It might show that America wished to develop a healthier relationship with England. Sometimes diplomacy is more important than money. Plus, the only defense that America had in keeping the Resolute was finders keepers, and that's not in line with the Golden Rule. So America returned the HMS Resolute to England, where the ship was met with celebrations and parades and excited crowds. It was a big moment in the relationship between the two nations. The Resolute served the British Navy for another 13 years until 1879, when it was decommissioned and taken out of service. A few years later, a surprise showed up at the White House, home of America's president. It was 1880, and Rutherford B. Hayes was serving as president. Hayes's personal secretary signed for a delivery, but he was confused. No one had ordered anything. Presidents get gifts, sure, but this surprise was very large and in a very heavy crate. So he got President Hayes, and they saw to the unpacking. Inside the crate, they found a desk. A giant desk made of wood with beautiful ornate carvings. It was big enough to sleep on, but it was also very pretty and clearly valuable. A lot of work went into this desk. Turns out a lot of history did too. After the HMS Resolute was taken out of service, it was scrapped. This is common. Part of the ships are valuable and usable for other things. But Queen Victoria and other members of British government thought returning America's favor would be a nice thing to do. The Resolute was, after all, the ship that had gone in search of so many other lost explorers, only to be lost itself, before being found by an American whaling vessel and kindly returned to Great Britain. The desk in the crate was made from timbers, salvaged wood from the HMS Resolute. It was hoped that the desk might be a link between the two nations and a symbol of diplomacy, a value that would prove to be more and more important as the years went on. And it's a value that still matters today. A president must be diplomatic, and this desk has become a constant reminder. You see, in the Oval Office, one of the most important rooms in the White House, the room where speeches have been and are still made, where laws are signed, where dignitaries sit for negotiations, in this room sits the Resolute desk. The desk today is known by the name of the ship that gave its wood. Laws have been signed on it, handshakes have been made over it, and the State of the Union addresses have been made from behind it. Presidential kids have played under it, and presidential cats have napped on top of it. 8 presidents have used it, and it is still being used today. That wood has seen history, before it was a desk and after. We hope the next president of the United States of America and every president elected by American citizens who follows after will know the history of the Resolute Desk and understand the importance of diplomacy and friendship. And maybe that finders keepers isn't good foreign policy. Thank you all for listening to this special episode. I hope you enjoyed it. I really like this story. I love the history of things like this. It's always fascinating to me, so I hope you enjoyed it as well. We will have a full episode like in a week and a half, 2 weeks before Halloween. And it's going to be really fun. I've been looking forward to this and working really hard on this upcoming episode. An old friend named Will Oldham, also known as Bonnie Prince Billy. He's a pretty famous musician. He is going to come back on. He was on like 2018 or so. And it's a great story that he's going to read, and the story that you'll hear my voice on as well. I'm really excited about. They're very fun. And I have Patreon people to thank, quite a few of them. You all listen for your names in the next episode. And I think that's it. I hope you have a great week. Thank you all very much. I'm Mick Sullivan. This has been The Past and the Curious.